coffee.
Well, if no one's gonna drink this, maybe I'll just... Ugh, that's terrible. That's...
Good morning. This is Chief Jordan. You are having a morning with the Chief. And we're going to go over, and I want to thank, this is my first show, the inaugural show. I want to thank Pop Culture Minefield for giving me this opportunity, and KGRA Radio, who is also simulcasting this, my very first podcast. And, just to give you a little bit of background on me, I did 38 years in law enforcement. I'm a little frustrated with the narrative regarding law enforcement in these days. And I started doing commentary on radio about a little over a year and a half ago. And I've enjoyed it a great deal because I've been able to deconstruct some of the negative narrative about law enforcement, which led me to KGRA Radio and some of the other shows that I've been on, including iDetective and Search Warrant, two of KGRA's shows. And I enjoyed it a great deal. And I was asked by Pop Culture Minefield if I wouldn't mind hosting a show. And they asked me to review some cop movies. And and I said, I love movies. I love cop movies. I really am looking forward to doing something like that. But I really want to I want to relate those movies to what's going on today. I really want to be able to interject not only my experience in 38 years in law enforcement, but also relate, what some of the plot and the storylines in these movies to what is going on today, because we have so much going on regarding law enforcement. We have so much negative narrative, and I want to use these movies to help put that into context and maybe deconstruct that negative narrative and put a little bit, give you guys another side of the story, so to speak, as to what is going on with law enforcement and criminal justice reform in society today. And the very first movie I really wanted to do was Dirty Harry, because Dirty Harry is a classic, iconic movie that speaks not only to what was going on then in 1971 when this movie came out, but also what is going on today. So just to kind of shape out a little bit of my experience, not only I'm a 38-year veteran in law enforcement, but I'm also the son of a police officer, the brother of a police officer, the nephew of a deputy sheriff, and the brother-in-law of a former sheriff of a county in the state of Michigan. So law enforcement has been part of my family and part of my experience in my life, my whole life. And I come with firsthand knowledge, both as a family member, as a kid, and of course, as a police officer myself. We're working on trying to get a couple of guests on board. I think Martine is working behind the scenes to get them on board to help me talk about this movie. Martin, you got anything to say?
Yes, actually, Mr. Rodriguez is here waiting for us.
Let me shape out a little. Let me give a little intro to Matt and then bring him. Oh, there he is, Matt.
Hey, good morning, Chief. How are you?
So thanks for joining us. Hopefully, Robert Rango will also join us. He's probably working on it, and maybe Martine can work with Bob and see if we can't get him up. But I asked these guys to join us, and let me give a little intro to Matt, and then he can shape out what I missed. But Matt's a 25-year veteran of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He retired at the rank of captain from the Sheriff's Department, but also went on to be a chief of police at a small town in Ventura, California, as well as working in several local governments or government agencies, both in transit, security, and policing, and/or city management. So Matt has a great deal of experience. He also has been on this earth for over 5 decades, and like me, for all those years he's been watching TV and movies. And I would say that he probably can be an expert on pop culture as well as law enforcement. Hey Matt, did I miss anything there?
No, you're absolutely right. It's actually kind of funny because listening to you, even though you grew up in Michigan, I grew up here in Southern California, but the backgrounds are very similar. I'm the son of a law enforcement officer. I'm the brother of a law enforcement officer. Grew up in the same decade and born in the same decade as you were. And, Dirty Harry was a big part of our childhood growing up, watching those movies and, all the other stuff, Barney Miller and everything else that we saw on TV. So our backgrounds are very similar. You're right. I did spend 25 years in the sheriff's department, and I had a opportunity to work with Chief Jordan for the last few years, which was great. Went on into government and worked in total 3 different transit agencies. So probably the only law enforcement officer on the West Coast, at least, who could say that. And, stayed in city government. So I got an opportunity to see the change in law enforcement, also the change in the homelessness, the crime, the cyclical rise and fall of crime since, the early 90s till today. So I look forward to the discussion, and thank you for having me on, Chief and Martine.
Well, the most interesting thing that I didn't bring up and you didn't bring up and we need to throw out there because it's going to be relevant as we discuss Dirty Harry is Matt ran for the LA County Sheriff recently. I helped him on his campaign, and he got a chance to talk to tens of thousands of people around LA County to get their temperature and their feeling about what's going on in terms of crime in LA County. And that feeling can be replicated in many of our major cities throughout the country with these Soros DAs and what's going on. And so we'll tap into that knowledge with Matt, and Martine as our second guest managed to log on yet. Yeah, okay. Well, let's bring Robert Rangel up. And hey, Bob, we don't get to see you yet. Can you hear me? Robert, are you there?
Here we go.
Bob, can you hear me?
Yes, Robert, the volume is very low.
Oh, okay. Well,
and I've got to turn it all the way up.
Okay.
I hear him well. I can hear him fine.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so let me introduce Bob a little bit. Bob is an academy classmate of mine, and there are a handful of guys in my academy class who had interesting careers that I will hopefully tap onto in my show. And Bob was one of the first ones I thought of. We went to the academy together, and we landed our first patrol assignment. I think we trained at different places, but our first real patrol assignment was at West Hollywood Sheriff Station. And Bob was there, and he retired as an investigator from the LA County Sheriff's Department with some injuries, and we'll get into a little bit of that.
Well,
and,
Martin, we have a problem.
We have a difficulty. We lost both of them, huh? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me introduce the show a little bit. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about Dirty Harry. It came out in 1971. It's a neo-noir action thriller starring Clint Eastwood, and it proved to be Bob, are you there?
Okay, I think.
There you go.
Oh, that's better. I have volume now.
Yeah. All right. Let me finish the introduction there. I was saying that there's a handful of guys that had interesting careers out of my academy classes, and you're definitely one of them. And Bob suffered some injuries and had to retire, but he retired as an investigator, an esteemed investigator. Went on to do some bodyguard work, which we might tap into today, and then went on to work for LAPD as a background investigator. But I think the most interesting thing, not that you didn't have an interesting career, but what you decided to do in between those jobs or during those jobs was to write a couple of books, which I've read one, and we're gonna tap into that knowledge that he had writing his books. But his books are, Martin, if we can actually bring up the titles of the books, if that's possible.
Yes. Give me just a second here.
Give you a second here. So I think It's the
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
the
Yes,
first one is
the
the Red Dot Club, right? And
this
here
one.
it is, yeah, by Robert Rangel. Now, Bob's got Robert Rangel books at robertrangelbooks.com, and you can go check those out. But Bob was involved in the shooting in West Hollywood. I happened to be on that night, and the very first chapter outlines that shooting. But this is really what police officers go through when they are in shootings and the aftermath of those shootings. It speaks to those stories. And it's a great book. Consider buying that book and reading it. But Bob has some great insight based upon that experience. His second book is it goes by the same title, The Red Dot Club, but it's got a subtitle, The Victims' Voices. And that tends to speak to, he's speaking for the victims of these crimes, right? He's speaking to that, and he's helping people understand what the victims go through. Did I miss anything on those, Bob? Is that about it?
Well, let me not to correct you, but really what it points out, the victims are the officers. So by virtue of what they see in the street and what they go through on a daily basis, or some major trauma that they have to handle, then they actually become the victims themselves, which is the point of the book. So we have the shootings in the second book also.
I think we got a little bit technical thing on Bob's side. Do you have another device on, Bob, that you're listening to?
Let me try this. It shouldn't be doing that.
Okay, well, we'll move forward while you work on that, Bob. And is that better?
Let's see if this is better. I don't know. How's this?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Okay. Actually, let me move away from. I'm sitting next to the computer. So, by virtue of what the police officers go through, they become the victims.
So we got a text from Slasherfield. I think that Harry Callahan may have been the inspiration for the character of John McClane of Die Hard series. You know, I don't know if that's true or not, but I love both movies and I love both characters. But let's talk a little bit about Dirty Harry. And I think, and this is where I was hoping to get your guys' opinion, and then pretty soon we'll start the movie or the clips of the movies as we go through. But, you know, Dirty Harry, you know, came out in 1971. And, you know, it was, you know, if you read history, although we were pretty young at the time, it was building crime. We came out of the 50s. And crime was pretty low in the 50s. Then we had the free spirit, free love of the 60s. And we had a lot of criminal justice reform at the time in the 60s. And what we saw was a lot of rise in crime, right? So by 1971, people were frustrated with this increase in crime. And I really think Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry in this movie tapped into that. And, you know, Don Siegel, the director, really made a great work to tap into that fear of the rise in crime. And most people don't know, but by 1981, you know, in California, we had about 14 murders per 100,000. And so this is based in San Francisco. So we went from almost no murders per 100,000 to 14. The next highest peak was in 1993 when we were all working, and we were at 13.1 homicides per 100,000. But the interesting thing, by the time we hit 2014, we were down to 4.4. So we saw this dramatic decrease, right, in crime. And I just think if you look at 71 to 80, that this rising crime, that's what Dirty Harry, it caught that feeling with the public, which is why it had so many successful sequels, right? Can somebody do something about this crime? What do you think about that, Matt?
Well, I think you're absolutely right, and it also speaks to a change in culture and society. You know, I'll take you back, like in the 60s, right? One of the heinous crime in Southern California was the Manson family and the Sharon Tate murders and what have you, right? And then when I was growing up here in Southern California and Los Angeles, you know, we were taught Don't talk to strangers, don't take candy from strangers, never get into a car with a stranger, because we had the Hillside Strangler, we had all kinds of really violent criminals, and then Dirty Harry absolutely tapped into that. The movie starts with the guy with a high-powered scope shooting an innocent girl swimming in a rooftop swimming pool. He's shooting from several hundred yards away from a high building, and then he's just crazy. He's absolutely crazed, and that's kind of what I grew up with. Not only being a cop's son, but I just remember, don't get into a car with strangers. Be careful. There's the Hillside Strangler. There's all these maniacs running around in Los Angeles. And then, you look at today, if you would have told me 10, 15 years ago, look, I want you to invest in this company called Uber. You give me $1,000 and I'm going to bring you back $1 billion. And I would have said, well, what's the premise of this business? Well, you get into a car with a stranger, and your teenage daughter will get into a car with a stranger, and he'll drive her all around, and and that's it. I would have said, no, I'll keep my $1,000. Thank you. That's a crazy concept. But look how much things have changed since when we were born. But yeah, you're right. That was Clint Eastwood and Hollywood tapping into the violence that we were all viewing on network television.
Yeah, we had a commentator indicate that one of the actors in the show played Dean Wormer, which I noticed when I watched the show, and in fact, it's almost a similar character. Just the guy in charge, and he sets up the line, which we'll get into with Dirty Harry, but also he's I think Vernon Jordan is his name, or I'm sorry, John Vernon is his name, and that's one. And he was also he followed Clint Eastwood in a few movies because he was in The Outlaw Josie Wales as Fletcher, and in fact, there's another interesting character in this. It's John Mitchum, so Robert Mitchum's brother. He's in this show, and he's DiGiorgio, I think, but he also was in The Outlaw Josie Wales. Great character actor. But one of the actors I really want to point out in the show before we start running the show and we bring up some clips is Andy Robinson. I mean, really, the two actors that make this show is Clint Eastwood and the killer, Andy Robinson, right? He played a great serial killer. And when this show started, this movie was based a lot upon the Zodiac, who was active just before this. In fact, Scorpio, the name of the serial killer in this movie, is one of the signs of the Zodiac, right? So the Zodiac killer killed five people up there in San Francisco, never really caught, never really truly identified who that guy was. But it kept people, they were in fear, right? And they were afraid. And I think we can go ahead and probably start running the show, Martin, and then we'll bring up the clip of the swimmer as this thing starts, because I really want to get into that clip.
It has no audio. It's some slideshow.
Yeah, let the slideshow start, but then sure, go ahead. Yeah, and I like the slide. One of the things that most people don't know is most major cities have these memorial walls where the police officers were killed in line of duty. Go ahead and bring up the clip, Mari. So here we got the So what I
I'm sorry.
Go ahead and run the clip and.
Gibbs is a long look.
Yeah, what I really liked about this scene is, first of all, it was reminiscent of another one of my movies hopefully I can do, and that's High Noon, where Gary Cooper throws his badge into the dirt because he feels like the town and society is kind of turned against him, is not supporting law enforcement. And I kind of saw that in this clip. Dirty Harry saying, I don't want to stay and play by these rules. I don't want to be here for this. And then he throws his badge his badge into the water. I'm a little more optimistic about that. Obviously I'm retired, so I'm not throwing my badge anywhere, but I just think that people need to start thinking about what do they really want from law enforcement, and do they want to support law enforcement? Harry's saying, I'm not getting the support. I'm not going to play by these rules. I'm out. In reality, he, of course, comes back when we have a bunch of sequels, which is great. But we shouldn't be giving up, right? We have a lot of lives to save by doing our job and doing it well. And hey, Martine, how much time do I got for wrap up here?
Oh, like 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for coming on the show for my first show. I appreciate it greatly. Hopefully we'll get some technical stuff working out. Would you be willing to come back in the future, Matt?
No, of course. I'm always here. I kind of recovered from my campaign, and this is the first time of me coming out of the hole. I've been in the bunker ever since June of last year. So this is the first public appearance I've made, and I'm honored to do it with you, Pat.
Bob, how about you? Willing to come back, talk about some of your stories? I know you were a little apprehensive at first, but it was a painful experience.
Oh, I tell you what, I really enjoyed it. You did a great job. You both had a lot of very interesting and phenomenal things to say today that I think people can relate to. So yes, I would definitely do it again, Pat. Thank you for the honor.
Okay, for a little wrap up here, I did want to let people know that I do support our efforts with homeless, and I am on the board of the LA Mission. If you get a chance to look them up, I greatly appreciate it. Make donations. It's losangelesmission.com. They do some great work, real good work, not the kind of work that's being pushed by politicians. Matt's currently working on building housing for veteran homeless folks, so it's something that's near and dear to our heart. And take a look at it, and I'll be able to expand a little bit more upon this in shows to come. I'd like you to go to robertranglebooks.com and look up Bob's books and consider buying his books. A lot of great stories. The chapter 1 of his first book, The Red Dot Club. I was there that night. That's Bob's shooting. Go ahead and read about Bob's shooting. And if you got any questions, you can always ask me in chat some other time. And anything else from you guys as we finish up the show?
No, I'm good. I just want to say thank you, Pat. Thank you to everybody, and thank you to all the amazing men and women that are out there trying to keep people safe.
Bob, thank you so much for joining me. All right. So I also want to thank, if I get a chance, I want to thank Gary for allowing me to do this podcast on Pop Culture Minefield. I encourage folks to subscribe and like this video and share it with a friend so that we get some folks who watch this video and hear what some real cops have to say about what's going on today. Thank you so much.
Bill?
Thank you.
All set?
Those sons of bitches.
Ma, I'm doing a show.